Okay.
Yeah, Joe's here. We can start.
Okay.
We're live.
All right. Call the meeting to order. Karen, will you please do the roll call?
Dave? Otis? Nancy?
Here.
Chris?
Here.
Sally?
Present.
Tor? And Richard?
Here. Okay. Do we have any amendments or changes you guys want to make to the meeting minutes or the agenda? Hearing none, do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
I so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do you have any public comments?
Mr. Chairman, you need to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
That's right, sorry. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting or make any amendments?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, do we have any public comments? Please come up to the podium and
State your name.
state your name and
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Sam Bungie, and I'm speaking as a private citizen, but my qualifications are that I was the chief of the fire department for 10 years, certified firefighter by the state and fire service instructor by the state of Alaska. I noticed on a previous public announcement that that the commission is considering changes to the setback requirement between instructors in this town. And I'd like to remind you that, fire heat spreads by several different methods, two of which are radiation and direct flame impingement. And the intensity of energy varies inversely with the square of the distance between structures. So the farther you are away from a fire, the less likely you are to catch on fire. So I urge you to maintain the existing spacing between structures. Sense?
Yep.
yes,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
this portion of the meeting is really for comments unrelated to the agenda.
okay.
And so you should be having the public hearing portion. If it's related to an agenda item, it should be under that agenda item,
Okay.
you know?
My name is Mark Jensen. I reside at 1201 Wrangell Avenue. I'm here representing myself. I listened to the radio this morning on the way it was advertised for the zoning that we're going to change in the borough. And I would like to request that you give a little more detail on how extensive this rezoning potential can be. On the radio this morning, it just said planning and zoning is going to have a meeting, they're going to address zoning. And in my opinion, that doesn't let the public know on the, what extent this could possibly be. That's all I'm requesting. I didn't read it in the pilot, so I don't know if it was advertised, with more detail there, but that's all I would ask.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I listened to the radio this morning as well, and the announcement was that this was applicable to the downtown area, and I called them after the announcement and said, no, this is applicable to all of Service Area 1, and you need to change the public service announcement about that.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any additional comments unrelated to the agenda items?
I think so.
Okay.
My comments are just general comments pertaining to the proposed new code. So, want me to speak now? I see they're specifically listed.
Probably let's put those under when we start talking about the zoning code a little bit later, okay?
So,
Just wait for a little bit, and
Okay.
we'll have a public hearing on that. So, any additional public comments? Okay, we'll move on to public hearing items. We have an application from Karen and Mark Severson for a variance of the 10-foot side yard setback requirement and the 35% maximum lot coverage requirement for property located at 109 Cornelius Road. The variance would allow applicant to expand an existing net shed. Do we have a motion on this? We continued this from the December meeting.
So moved.
A second.
Discussion? I think we agreed that we were going to allow them to go within 5 feet of the property line, but we were going to require them to stay within the 35% maximum lot coverage at the December meeting, and that we were looking for the findings of fact from the last time we approved this, and I believe those are included in the packet. Do you guys have any comments, or do you feel we should move forward with the findings of fact from the last time we approved this?
Mr. Chair?
Dave, yes.
Yeah, we talked about this at extreme length a couple years ago, I believe.
Yeah, we did.
And I don't see any issues as long as I think the biggest concern was snow sliding onto the Weaver's property. That if they do this, they're supposed to put the snow clip to the roof,
Yeah, and stay 5 feet back.
stay 5 feet back. Right?
Yeah, with the ease from the property line.
Although I would like to note that what Mr. Bunky said is probably, I would definitely agree with, but this is non-living spaces, so I mean, it's bad if a fire breaks out, of course, and 10 feet isn't, I don't know if there's enough room between the two structures if there was a fire, I can't recall.
Yeah, I think 10 feet is the minimum
Right.
for fire code. I know most fire departments like to see 30 feet, but so do we have an amendment to accept the motion as with the findings of fact, or?
Can I accept the one last time?
How do we say that? We say,
Use the findings of fact that we approved this last time 2 years ago and
and approve.
approve?
Yeah,
Second.
I so move.
Second.
Joe?
I got a question. When you said 5 feet, what are we referring to with 5 feet?
The
The eve line will be 5
will
feet.
be no closer than 5 feet.
Okay. Just so that's clear when he
Yeah.
comes in for a permit to do this.
Okay.
That is what I'm going to be looking for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
under item, or number 3 on the
So
previous.
it's not the post that's holding up the
Roof line.
trusses, it's the actual
It's-
face of the eave, the overhang.
Roof line is to be
Okay.
no closer than 5
I just need that
Yeah,
property
clear.
line.
roof line is to be no closer than 5 feet, is what it says in the previous one we approved,
Yeah,
so.
Just so it's, I didn't read it anywhere, so, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You do a roll call on this, or?
Who were the mover and seconder?
Second.
I moved.
Dave?
Yes.
Yancy?
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
and Chris.
Yes. Okay, moving on.
Mr.
to-
Chairman, that was a vote on the amendment. You have to actually vote on the main motion now.
We have to vote on the,
Main motion as amended.
okay. Okay, roll call on the main motion.
Dave,
They just did this.
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes. Okay. B is the proposed Petersburg Development Code and the code amendments. Do we have a motion on the code amendments? Motion to accept?
Mr. Chairman, you do not need to do a motion. You're just doing a public hearing.
We're just in public hearing? Okay. Open the public hearing on the code amendments. Do we have comments?
John?
John, this would be the time.
The meeting amendment, 5 feet. They don't. Somewhere.
I have some general, my name is John Nervis, and I own Island Ventures LLC, Courtyard out of Scotty. I have some general comments on the proposed new code.
Oh, this is.
Yes.
Anyway, the new code is like learning a totally new foreign language and new logic. I think 2 only public meetings before it becomes an ordinance is an aggressive schedule. I think you need to allow more time for dummies like me and the general public to figure out what end is up, so that the general public can better help make it a better code with suggestions. One area I applaud you addressing tiny houses, but from what I read so far, you need to be even more accommodating to them. They are a potential problem solver for our tight housing situation there, especially for low income people and retired people as well, and seniors, especially seniors. I recently visited my sister in Bodega Bay in California, and they live in a community of tiny houses. It's what we kind of call a trailer park here, but instead of mobile homes, they have tiny houses in there. And it's pretty tight spacing, but it's a pretty nice facility and very, very comfortable. And so things like that, I think, should be considered for our community. What I read in your proposed new code, where they're allowed for additional, like cottage space for residential houses, is good. But I think that's going to be practical, mostly just for relatives or father-in-laws, mother-in-law type place. And I don't think it's really going to make too much of a dent in our housing situation.
Okay.
And let's see, what else on my list here? One thing that I've always been a problem for me has been the past code and your new code is pretty much the same for major subdivisions, and that's where you have one parcel that's being made into 4 or more lots. And when I purchased the property that I presently have out at Scotty, which is 1 lot, and it is 89-point-some acres, I intended to subdivide that. And so in 2003, I went through all the major subdivision processes required, several $1,000s worth to about 10 grand, hiring a professional engineer and had everything laid out and went through this board and got all the approvals. And is for a total of 13 lots along Wilson Avenue, and it's all zoned industrial. And then that went out to bid, and it didn't come close to paying for the income that I would realize from selling the lots, and so I abandoned that idea. And so far I've been able to pay the taxes by, with the income that I have from the boatyard operation, but it's the way the code is written, and the new code as well. It looks appropriate for like a very high value property in a suburb of Portland, but it's the restrictions for on the major subdivision process here are just really don't fit Petersburg. You can't realize income off of the lots without the cost to develop. And what I'm faced with is turning all that property into a conservation easement, and that would be a permanent reduction of industrial property available to the community. What's really in demand here is low-cost property, small lots for commercial fishermen, for storage of gear. They're not interested in sewer and water. They do want electricity, but not all the requirements that would come along with the major subdivision. Just makes that property too expensive. Excuse me, I'm trying to sing. Apologize. So I think if you could pay more attention to the major subdivision and how it would somehow be more amenable to, especially the commercial fishing people, to be able to purchase property without having to put in sewer and water and road improvements like it would as a residential development. And that's all I have. I'll be available to speak when you get to my agenda on the lease application for the program.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can I ask John a question?
Yes.
Specifically, John, what were the impediments on your property? That you had to put in sewer and water?
Correct, and the road.
And the road?
Yeah, and the sewer, to put all the three of them together, and I was hoping to sell 1 acre lots for somewhere in the $35,000, $40,000 range, so we'd have to be up at the $60,000 range to pay for those improvements.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can I ask a question of Liz?
Mm-hmm.
Liz, is there any distinction in the code if you develop property between residential and industrial?
Currently, no, and as proposed, no.
Okay, thank you. Then, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
could I put that as a discussion item
Certainly.
on the agenda for the next meeting?
Mr. Kensinger?
Yes.
The next meeting would be an action meeting for the proposed, potentially for the proposed code, so you may want that as an action item if it's something that you think we should be amending.
So even though, I thought we were going to have, excuse me, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Since we didn't have a quorum the last meeting, and we were going to have 3 public meetings, I was just assuming we were going to bump our schedule back.
Well, you could bump it, but I won't be here, so
Okay.
I wasn't planning on changing it because it's already been published this way, but you can add another meeting if you would like. You could probably do that under your discussion items. Well, actually, it's on the agenda, so you can have that discussion later on the agenda.
Okay. Okay.
Anything further?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Any further comments? Yes.
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to discuss the amendment that I proposed at this time, or if it just later.
That would be under the code amendments, so. Yes.
Can I do a public comment? I have a
Sure.
comprehensive thing here.
Come on up.
My name is Eric Kroger, and I'm representing myself. I own property on Lumber Street, up Hammerslough, and on Mason Street here in town. And I've been getting emails with the existing code change, and I really appreciate the outreach you guys have been doing. I just wanted to make a chance to come in and give public comment. I've read through all the documents and just give some feedback. And what I did like was that you guys are trying to reflect not what the code is now, but the actual use. I think that's a good thing. For example, Scout Bay Loop Road, Hungerford Hill, the zonings are kind of wrong there. And what I did like was for Hammerslough there that you guys are going for the historical C3 or the historical commercial. And I would encourage you to do the whole slough that way and not just portions of it. And just reading through it, it looks like it's definitely time for Petersburg to update, and I think it's a really good start. I think these public meetings are a good idea, and we're going to get to a better place with ADUs. And the other comment I really want to make about it is I've lived south and I've lived here in Petersburg off and on for 15 years, and I've done some property development in California, in Wells, Washington, and here. And the Petersburg economic development, and Joe especially, you come in and you talk to him and he feels like an ally. He's working with you, whereas I've been in other places and the city departments are not that way. So I really want to comment and say, hey, we've got a really good thing here. We need to continue to make it that, because they try to find every way possible south so you can't do something, whereas here they're trying to find ways to do things. And I really want to make that distinction and say that this next code is that as well. It's not, we aren't trying to impede development, we're just trying to do the right sort of development. Just positive comments.
Thank you. You wanted to discuss?
Yeah, I had made an amendment, it's in here, it's in the packet, about the accessory dwelling units and the find it, on page 24 of our packet here. The concern I have is that under the way it's currently worded, where she's one line through it, the size of the accessory dwelling unit is restricted by the size of the existing home on the property. And I feel that as the property size increases, the size difference between the accessory dwelling unit and the primary dwelling unit on the property matters less and less. And that's why, say, like you've got a 1,500 square foot house on a 1 acre lot. Under the way it's currently worded without the amendment, it would limit the size of the accessory dwelling unit to 500 and some odd square feet. On a lot that size, is that really that important? So I made the amendment to increase the size up to 800 square feet and not greater than 80% of the size of the primary structure. And I don't know where else to go with this, but and I'd broken it out into different size classes as well, because on a smaller lot, well, you kind of become more limited on maximum lot coverage.
Yeah, I think the lot coverage becomes an issue.
Yeah. But the two drawings I passed out, they're scale drawings, like 1 acre lot and 1/2 acre lot, and showing different size buildings on them. And The way it's currently worded in the code, if you wanted to build an 800 square foot accessory dwelling unit on an acre lot, you would have to increase the size of the primary residence to be able to build the 800 square foot. Otherwise, you're limited to 500 square feet. And you could legally do the increase in size, and you've got plenty of room on the lot to do it, but is it right to make a property owner, is it right to force them to add on to an existing structure they don't want to add on to, just so they can have a little bit bigger accessory dwelling unit?
Liz, I have a question on this. What is the purpose of having that size restriction, other than just saying accessory dwelling unit can't be more than 800 square feet?
Well, it's partially aesthetic, where you don't really want two full-size houses right on, a neighborhood, and you're trying to maintain the character of a single-family residential neighborhood, but still allow people to have this flexibility to add an ADU.
Okay.
If they wanted to do something larger, then we would probably encourage them to do a duplex and just actually make it look like one large house versus two separate large houses. So.
Yeah, I was just saying, since we're limiting the maximum size is 800 square feet
right.
for an ADU, does it really make matter that much? I mean, if somebody comes to us with a plan for, say, a 500 square foot and an 800 square foot on the same property, a 500 square foot would be considered the ADU, the 800 square foot would be considered the house. Does it really make a difference?
Well, no, because the ADU needs to be no more than 40% of the primary.
Right. Okay.
So you wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if that's why I was wondering why we just is there a reason to have it that we just say the ADU's maximum is 800 square feet?
The primary reason is to maintain that character of a single-family residential neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But I would add that Richard brings up a good point, because I think the code is written where down south you would probably have the primary house built first and then the accessory dwelling comes second. A few people have already come and talked to us about wanting to build the accessory first. They want to build a small house first and then later, live in it and then save money to build their dream home second. So I think what he's talking about makes sense, because we actually might have the reverse happening more often than we have it the other way. So I think it might make sense for us to make that type of adjustment and allow for that.
Yeah, and if they build the 800 square foot house that's eventually going to become the accessory dwelling unit, then it would force their next home on that property to be 2,000 square feet minimum, or maybe they only want 1,400 square feet. Of course, they could get a variance, but
Maybe.
maybe. But this has been an action item, so that's just my public testimony, I guess.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes. Dave.
Yeah, everybody, at least here in the commission knows, I will make a proposal to reduce from 525 to 400 square feet for the home occupation allowances. I think it's right now, it's what, 525? Right, so just to let you guys know, and my reasoning for that is that 400 square feet is 20 by 20, and then if somebody's got something that they want to use larger, then I'd request that they go through the planning and zoning process. Because right now, you can just have a home occupation business the way the new code is and not have to go and get a permit from planning and zoning. So if they want to have something that's going to take more than 400 square feet, then they have to go through this process and get approval. And then it's also in there that if they're going to have an employee, they also have to go through the planning and zoning process, correct? That's in there right now.
Either, either an employee or if they're having customers come to the house, and that's the way we currently operate, so.
Okay. So the intent is not to say no, but just to go through
To say they have to go through a more
they have to go
involved
through,
process.
they have to go through a formal process. They can't.
Okay.
Right.
Liz, did you have any further comments on these changes that have been proposed?
The one Dave just mentioned, or Richard?
Just on any of the things that are...
I was going to comment that on the tiny house one that Mr. Morgus brought up, you could have multiple tiny houses in the high-density district, so you could create that situation he's talking about in high density. So that would be allowed there. The ADU, that would be a tiny house if you wanted to put it on a lot that already had a dwelling on it or a residential dwelling, so you could add that second one.
Single-family
Yeah,
residential.
exactly. So it's kind of driven by the underlying code, but a tiny house could be in any of those different codes and in any of those different zones.
Okay. You have anything?
Nope. I'm still learning.
Okay.
Fine, thanks.
Okay. So, are we done with the public hearing on the code amendments?
Mr. Chairman, so just to respond to, sorry, I wasn't really thinking that what you said through, but I will prepare an amendment so that you could do a major subdivision of industrial property without improvements, and you guys can consider that at your next meeting, based on Mr. Murgis's testimony. And then also, Mr. Grunberg, expanding the commercial district in Hammer Slough, I think is what he is mostly talking about, where it's right now it's mixed between commercial and single-family residential, and so looking at making that more commercial in that historic district. Richards, we already have that one, and then Dave, you said to reduce to 400 square feet?
400 square feet.
Okay, so I'll
25.
have that for the next one too. And I think if I got him, that's all the ones. And then you received testimony from Mr. Gilliland about the historic district in Singley Alley. So I have an amendment to allow woodworking and welding, small scale, in that section, include those specifically in there per his request for you to consider. And then he also had a comment on the type of roofing used. The way the code's written now, it doesn't require you to put a metal roof on. It just says that you can only use metal on a roof. So if so you can't have like a metal warehouse in the historic district. That's really all it's saying. So there is no direction on what type of roof it has to be, but I'm not sure if he was suggesting that we be specific to maintain historical accuracy on what it should be, or just was concerned that we were going to require a metal roof. I tend to think what he was saying is we shouldn't be requiring a metal roof per se, because that's not always what was there, and we're not requiring a metal roof under
I think there might be a little confusion just how it's written, is that what you're saying is that metal can only be used on a roof. You can't use it on siding.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
yeah. So, but I think that's all of the ones we've gotten, and then we received a comment today on urban farming, and I'll work on something for March for that.
It's, in reading through that, there was comment about allowing that in commercial zoning, but I would also like to see some sort of allowance for that in the rural zoning of the borough.
In rural residential, you mean?
Possibly in rural residential, yeah. So.
It's kind of a vague, it's a non-existent area in our current
Yeah.
code, and it's kind of vague in the proposed, so we might see what we can do there.
I would proceed with caution on this because I've seen some rather large industrial style commercial agriculture that uses hydroponic technology. Actually, I think they even had a radio article on it where somebody stacked up a bunch of shipping containers and were using, and they have some systems out there that are quite good. I don't know whether I would want to have a residential house and have somebody stack 3 or 4 shipping containers and convert it into an urban farm on a lot next to me. So I think we should proceed with caution there, because any hydroponic or inside type of what she's talking about, those are, large structures, industrial style buildings. So I think we want to be careful on, everybody likes to think that, somebody's going to be growing some tomatoes in their backyard, but that's not what hydroponic industrial farming is right now, at least.
But it could be contained to a smaller scale operation. Again, it's just how we phrase it in writing the code.
Right, but if you're going to build a building to grow commercial quantities, it's going to be an industrial or a commercial activity. It's going to be a warehouse, or it's going to be a bunch of stacked containers. So, there's not to say that we shouldn't allow that. I don't know whether we want to allow that in residential areas, is what I'm trying to say.
I think I was just looking at commercial. Yeah.
Just in commercial areas.
And then Chris says rural residential, so that'll be your policy call, on the amendment on whether to extend that into rural residential or not.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just say right up front, I'm not going to be supportive of it being allowed in residential areas.
I did a little bit of research just beforehand, and we're not breaking new ground here, so I think we can look at some things that are being done in other communities and maybe go off something like that. But anyway, you'll have that amendment as a standalone to accept or not at the next meeting. So.
Anything further on the code? Okay, we'll move on to item C, an application from Island Ventures, LLC, to lease approximately 5,400 square feet of tidelands at Scow Bay Turnaround to construct a temporary boat ramp. Do we have any public testimony on this? John?
I'm just available for questions.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just want to let you know that the Harbor Board voted to support Mr. Murgis's application, just for your information.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we support John's lease application as it's stated.
Second.
Discussion? Yes.
I think it's a good idea. I understand some of the constraints. I'm I'm definitely supportive. I guess I don't really understand why we're weighing in on this, but since we have the opportunity.
Because it's a lease lease, it goes through planning.
Yeah, I guess my only recommendation I'd give to the mayor and the borough assembly is that they accept this and that they make the lease payment as low as possible. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, hearing no further discussion, Karen, you want to do the roll call?
Sally?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Yancy?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to an application from Roger Sampson and Cheryl Keegan for variance from the front yard setback requirement to allow for construction of a garage 5 feet from the property line at 208 Midcoff Highway.
Did you dial 9 first, Karen?
Yes, sir.
Maybe we have to dial 19. Is it a long distance call?
It doesn't matter, just to get out of the queue.
Hi, Roger, it's Karen.
Hi, Karen.
You are up.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Do you have any public testimony on, well, I can turn it back to the information here on this one. Do you have any public testimony on the application from Roger Sampson concerning the variance on the front yard setback?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this area zoned commercial or industrial? Why is the exception of putting a 1,650-foot garage with an 1,800-square-foot house a good idea? Somebody explain that to me?
It's a single-family residential. We don't have size limits on structures. We just have a maximum lot coverage, and as long as you're within that maximum lot coverage, you can build up to that level. So we don't regulate what size the house is versus what size the warehouse is.
But under the new code, we will.
There is an amendment for warehouses, but that hasn't been determined. So it would have to be in residential areas for a warehouse. You would have to have your house built. the part about whether there's going to be a size limit, I haven't proposed anything, and that's sort of a question mark whether the commission wants to put something in there or not.
So this isn't considered an ADU then?
No, it's not.
It's considered a warehouse on a residential property?
Yeah. An ADU is a residential dwelling. The garages or the warehouse is not a residential dwelling.
I have a real heartburn with a warehouse on a really tiny, skinny little lot.
Do we get any comment from the state concerning setbacks on this, Liz? I didn't see anything in the packet, so it's...
I didn't see the neighbors' comments either.
We didn't get any comments. The only ones were from Public Works and just me asking whether they had any trouble with it being that close to the easement. And generally, we don't want structures in our utility easement. So when they actually come to the point of, to the building permit part, we're going to get them out, make sure that they're not in those easements. Mm-hmm. There's a state culvert there. So again, when we get to the building part, they'll need to contact State of Alaska DOT and talk to them about making sure that they're not on that culvert or if they have any concerns about the culvert. So that's going to determine a little bit on the siting of that structure.
How wide is the utility easement on that property there?
What I see here in this tiny little print, I'm not sure that the state has an easement on the culvert. The one I'm talking about is the one along the highway.
Yeah, that's
I think
what I
it's a
was
10
curious
foot.
about.
I believe it's 10 feet.
It's 10 feet from the front property line?
I think so, yeah. I remember correctly.
Dave?
I also had, I guess this would be in reference to the easement, there's a light pole and a power pole there too. It seems like that's going to be like right in front of the garage.
Well, they address that in the text.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I know they addressed it in the text, but that's going to be hugely expensive to move.
Yeah.
I believe the cost is to the property owner, and he's
Right.
been working with Power and Light to have that
Right.
relocated. Yeah.
Okay. So the only issue we're addressing here is whether to allow them a 5-foot variance on the setback.
Next to a residential dwelling. Also. There's quite a bit of space between the garage and the house. It seems like maybe they could move it a little bit over.
Yeah.
Looks like about 15 or 20 feet to me. I'm just guessing.
It does seem as though the proposed garage is actually closer to the neighbor's house than it is to the proposed house.
I mean, yeah. I just hate to see another warehouse on View property. This is going to be 115 feet when you drive by that you can't see the water. And it just kind of rankles me, I guess.
Doesn't really state clearly here. They're saying 5 feet is what that nearest corner is going to be to the front property line. I'm just trying to figure this out.
Is Mr. Sampson not on the phone?
Mr. Sampson, are you on the phone?
Yes, sir, I am.
How close is that close corner to the front property line?
The way I placed it in there to scale, it's about 6 feet from the property line. And I don't know on the size of your packet, sir, but I did draw attention to my neighbor to the north shows an arrow. His setback currently is 8 feet, and my neighbor to the south the setback is 1 foot 2 inches.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to maintain something with alignment so that I don't disrupt neighbors' views.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw in the packet that there was no feedback from either of the neighbors. Okay. And were those two houses were built before they expanded the road, correct?
I believe
At least
so.
one of them was.
Yeah, one of them for sure, yeah.
And she would have loved to have moved her house closer to the beach, but she was using an existing foundation.
And that existing foundation was probably built before they expanded the road.
It was built in the 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess my biggest concern is the fact that that is sticking into that power line easement the way it looks in this drawing. And even though the state hasn't commented on it, I really don't like to see pushing things any closer to the road than what the nearby structures are. So I think it looks like that the garage could be turned a little bit and maintain like an 8-foot setback off that front property line.
Yeah, could I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Roger, why did you have to place the garage the way you did? Is there any way that you can site it on that piece of property so that it's not in the setback area?
I've tried different scenarios. I'm trying to get a 32-foot boat, which overall, by the time you get the engines on the back, the tongue of the trailer on it, it ends up being 46 feet in length, not counting my truck. So I'm trying to position it so that, in fact, I can pull off the edge of the highway and back in without obstructing any traffic or causing a hazard on the highway. I ideally would love to turn it 90 degrees and run it out to the end of my property line. However, that would require a Corps of Engineering permit, and there is an issue regarding either a fixed or meandering high tide line. And I've spoke to the Corps about it, and I don't think it's favorable that I would get the permit. So we're trying to stay within the boundaries that would not require a Corps permit and still put the structures there, and that's for the kind of funny layout. I do understand the concern there. And in fact, at one point, I spoke to the building department about these structures almost being side-by-side connected. Don't think I can get them in again without going beyond the toe of that steep drop-off there, thus requiring the Corps of Engineering permit.
Are you getting a Corps permit for your house? It looks like it exceeds past the toe slope.
We're seeking that, but we do know that we can do it by turning it more and staying within the toe slope if the permit is not granted.
If the garage were turned a little bit to maintain that 8-foot setback off the front property line along the length of the garage, would you be able to back into it?
I believe I would, sir, because on the easement, I've spent some time with Mr. Hagerman and Mr. Newman, and they said the cable that anchors that pole isn't necessary at all. And the pole doesn't cause a problem an obstruction. The guy wire did, but they said that it's not necessary there. So yes, I believe that we could twist the garage slightly to maintain the 8-foot setback. And the door is offset on the proposed garage to be on the highway side, not centered in the end wall, but it is substantially towards the highway side to get a better alignment to back the boat in. So I do believe it would still work.
Okay.
As long as he didn't have to turn the house back.
Yeah. Any further discussion, comments? Thoughts? Questions?
I guess my main concern is that DOT really needs to weigh in on this, not only because of the culvert issue, but also because of the road issue.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't a driveway permit going to be required by DOT?
When you're coming off a state highway, you're going to have a driveway permit.
So that's going to force DOT to weigh in anyway.
Mm-hmm. Would have been nice to have DOT's thoughts on this.
Yeah, and also the neighbor that told me she did submit hers. I called her because it didn't give me a firm address. I mean, I didn't have it in my mind what 208 Metcalf Highway was.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know who the adjacencies were, and so I called one that I thought it might be, and it was.
Okay. And she submitted comment, or?
She said she made comments. I don't know. Maybe to her sister or something. I don't know.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have those comments, so we can't take action on them.
Sounds like things could change with the core permit issuance, too.
What are your thoughts on this, Dave?
I'm reluctant to give the variance just because there's just so many, at this time, because there's so many outstanding issues here. I think we need to wait and see whether we can get a core permit first or not.
Yep.
We could potentially do a conditional approval on condition that they are able to obtain the core permit.
Well, the thing is, if we
No.
give them an approval on the variance, and then they can't get the core permit, they have to move the house, then it's going to be, I think I have to rethink their whole thoughts on how to do this anyway. We could continue it to a future meeting and see if we can get comment back from DOT.
And the core.
And the core, but the core doesn't move that fast.
Right.
So.
It did for us. 3 days. Yeah.
So.
I guess my feeling right now is, I mean, I don't feel like I have enough information to variance, but if I had a little bit more information, I could support it.
I think that's my concerns right now, is that we don't have feedback from particularly DOT. And I think that the plans could change drastically, and then we're going to be back to looking at doing something even different. I'd hate to go ahead and make a decision on this and then have the plans have to be changed again.
We can continue it so they have a little bit of more time to get this information.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion that we continue this until we have information, feedback back from DOT, and the applicant has received permission from the Corps to place the house as he's proposed.
I'll second that.
Can I ask a question? What are you looking for feedback about the culvert from DOT?
We're looking for feedback about the culvert and about the setback off the highway.
So the utility easement is the borough's easement, and so that, is comments from Carl Hagerman.
Yeah.
So if you want culvert comments,
Okay.
is that what you're looking for? But that doesn't really affect the...
That doesn't affect the variance.
Yeah, the location of the variance.
Yeah.
Because it's on the front side, not on the side.
But the core permit, though.
And the placement.
Because we're going into the setback, the variances for the setback on the highway. I'd like to hear from DOT if they're okay with us offering a variance that goes into that front yard setback.
It's not their setback.
No, it's well, you're saying the utility easement.
Utility easement.
What is our actual setback? I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Is this including the bike path? We're talking, it's like that 8 foot, is that building is 8 foot from the bike path, and then there's another width of the bike path to the highway, right?
Yeah, the utility easement, I would, as far as the utility easement goes, I would not like to see that building encroach at all into that. So.
So you understand the easement is actually on Mr. Sampson's property,
Right.
the utility easement is.
Right.
So that's not on DOT property. Yeah, okay.
Right, it's hard to...
It's a lot here, yeah.
Well, and this is something we discussed earlier. It's, I kind of wanted to go take a look at this, but, since we're not supposed to do that anymore.
I don't know why you keep bringing that up. We've gone through this a million times. Nothing is prohibiting you from going to look.
All right, well, I'll go take a closer look at it then. I've driven by it and looked at it, but that's about it.
So, yeah.
I guess I just want to understand what feedback you guys need, what information you need. Is it just the core permit that you want to get back before you make a decision? That's the part I'm struggling with, is what information you'd like.
I'd like to hear back from the core permit, but I also like to hear back from DOT about any concerns they have about what is being proposed, so that we're not approving something that they're going to say that they're going to have heartburn with, or like how close he can be to the culvert and on the highway side. I already know that the borough would like to see the building not in the easement for utilities.
And DOT may have no heartburn at all.
They may not, but
it'd be nice to hear that.
It would be nice to have something from them stating that.
I don't know that you're going to get anything in writing. In the past, we haven't been able to do that, so just that we can ask the question.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
Are you talking about the culvert that is at the very north end of the property?
Yes.
That is a designated easement that was given for this property to the state of Alaska, and this is placed not to be in that easement area. It's clear of it.
Okay. And then I guess our other concern is the power line easement on the highway side. To make sure that we're outside of that power line easement.
Well, Mr. Mr. Sampson said if we went to 8 foot, he could still do it, and,
Yeah.
and he would be out of the power line.
Yeah, he should be out of the power line easement if he does it, if he stays at 8 feet.
So maybe we could give him variance for.
But
Yeah, well, that seems reasonable.
that was my inclination in reading through it and looking at the property earlier, was that if we kept it at 8 feet, it would solve the problem. Now, if he has to move the house, the house may be in the way, and then he's going to have to
If
do
he has to
something
move the
different.
house, it doesn't look like it'll
Yeah.
work at 6 foot or 8
Right.
foot to me.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So,
So we
Right.
should wait.
Well, I can withdraw my motion that we go ahead and allow him have an 8 foot easement on the power easement.
I'm still concerned about the core issue, though.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of out of our,
It's not our,
that's not our
Yeah.
call.
But it will completely change things if it doesn't get approved.
Yeah, but then he'd have to come back to us and then with a different proposal then,
yeah,
if he
Maybe.
had to.
because it's going to change things completely.
Right. Right, I mean, I don't want to hold him up. And I guess, now that I got my glasses on, I can see that, yeah, the garage is not on the easement for the culvert. So Roger, the way I'm looking at it, at least on this is, and excuse me for not noticing this, it looks like what would be the north east corner of the garage is right on the edge of the easement for the culvert.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's actually clear a couple feet. My marker, I wanted to make sure it was clear where the structure was at, so it's kind of a wide line.
Okay.
But
And then the placement of the garage, is that going to work if you have, as you discussed, if you have 8 feet?
yes, I believe it will work, and it will work just fine.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, I guess I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. We have another motion?
Yeah, then I'll make another motion that we allow a variance with an 8 foot setback
On the garage.
on the garage.
Do you have a second?
A second.
Karen, you want to do a roll call?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah?
before you do that, I just want to make sure that if you look at page 42 on the staff report, so the recommendation is that the building be kept out of the utility easement, as you've just suggested, that the location be reviewed by ADOT just to make sure that we're okay with the culvert, and third, that the garage doors be on the south side so they're not opening out. Not that I would expect this to happen, but if there's some substantial change of plans that they don't open out right onto the highway, so he's, trying to back a boat off the highway onto the lot. So just for your consideration. And also, the motion should include adoption of the findings.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll amend my motion for the third time.
It'll be adjusted to 8 feet from the property line.
8 feet
Yeah.
from the,
Okay.
8 feet from the 5 feet.
And adopt it with the findings of fact that are on page 42.
I don't have a 42, I have a 43.
Got a picture on it.
This one.
Okay, 43.
On the flip side. No,
Oh.
you got it on the other side. Flip the whole thing over.
Oh, yes, thank you. Oh, yeah, okay, thank you.
So we'd just be changing this to 8 feet.
Right, right.
Okay.
Would you restate the motion,
Do you want to
please?
restate the motion?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the motion is everything that's included on the findings of fact on page 42, with the exception of that the garage be 8 feet from the property line instead of 5.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Is any comments?
So nothing about the core.
No, that's outside of our
Yeah.
jurisdiction.
Karen, you want to do the roll call?
Yes, I do. Nancy,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Sally.
No.
Okay. Let me get back to the agenda.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Bye.
Okay. And then item E is a request from the borough manager on behalf of Mayor Jensen to change our schedule on the hearings for the zoning code. Dave?
I think I agree with what the mayor said, that I think when people start realizing what's actually being proposed, they might have more questions.
Well, and since we didn't have a meeting with a quorum in January, so we said we would have 3 meetings on this.
The same time, though, there is, once we're done with it, it goes to the Borough Assembly where there's going to be more
Right.
public hearing on it.
But I'd like to make sure we send to the Borough Assembly something that has had plenty of time for people to digest it and make comments and changes to it so that it's a little more fleshed out and complete as far as, you know, what the public input is before it goes before the Borough Assembly, so that it makes it a little bit easier at that level. So if that means, and I don't know, do we want to try to fit another meeting in somewhere in the schedule before we have our action meeting next month? Or do we want to, because that way we can stay on track with the schedule that Liz has proposed? Or do we want to try to see if we can adjust the schedule?
I'm available. I'm not going to be out of town between now and the next one. So
Yeah, I'm going to be here till the next meeting. Or till
What's
after.
Liz's schedule like?
I will not be.
You'll not be here? You're gone?
Even tomorrow.
Okay.
I'll be here until March 7th.
I leave Friday, but I'm back Wednesday, so I'm just out for a quick trip.
I mean, I share the mayor's concern. I mean, I'd rather people have an opportunity to make some recommendations and some comments on this before it goes to the assembly. It'll just make their job a little bit easier. In the interest of not having the whole thing, not having the baby thrown out with the wash water.
And I don't know if it has to be in exactly this forum either. If we're just having a public meeting specifically on this topic, it could be a little bit less formal. Am I correct, Liz?
You're not required to have, X number of public hearings. So
Yeah.
you could, but if you want to put it on the record, you should have a full meeting. I mean, the other option is to have a work session, and then we could take those comments and then have to put them all on the record at your next regular meeting, because you want to have a basis for any changes you make. You want to have that on the record before you make your changes. So it's a little bit easier just to do a regular meeting, have it all be on the record, and then if there are changes that come from that, you can say, well, we heard testimony, it's on the record, and this is what we're basing this amendment on, or something like that. Just a little less paperwork, I think.
So do we want to add another meeting sometime between now and our March meeting? And what date are we scheduled for the March meeting, by the
6th.
way? The 6th?
6th.
Okay.
I'm in favor of that idea.
Should we do it? I mean, the whole idea of this is trying to get as much public input as possible. Should we try and do an evening meeting, as much as I hate to say that?
Yeah, since both this meeting and the March 6th meeting are in the daytime, it would be an alternate time slot.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to that.
So why don't I throw out February 20th in the evening? Is that,
Well, is
Karen?
the space available, Karen?
I don't know. I don't have access to that anymore. It's not in a shared one, but
I think there's an assembly meeting that night, no? Does it get changed?
What day of the week
Oh,
is
okay.
that?
That's what I have on mine.
Tuesday?
Okay.
it got changed, you said?
To the 26th, okay.
And I don't know what else we could do to get more, maybe we should tell people, yeah, we're going to rezone your property, you better come.
I did correct the radio this morning.
I mean, I think you have to realize, too, that I've had, 20, 25 people in my office
Yeah.
just asking questions. So they're not necessarily coming here, but anyone who proposes or has any concerns, I certainly encourage them to email or write. But the ones that you're seeing here are not the only people that are informed or looking at this, too. So if that helps you put your mind at ease at all.
Yeah, Jeff wants to eliminate.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what works sometimes at the assembly level is to reach out to the newspaper and the radio station, let them know that you've got a meeting coming up that's important to the community, and that gives the newspaper person a chance to sit down with a couple members of the planning commission and explain what they're trying to do, and like a week before the meeting is going to happen, sit down with Joe up at the radio station or whoever.
Yeah.
And just chat about it with the community, just so that people have a chance to hear what's going on. Because just because you and I know what's going on, this community, we're all busy, but those two venues of getting information out seem to work really well, and that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, if the radio could do a call-in, it would be very helpful.
They've actually, the newspaper and the radio have already covered this more than once.
Yes.
Maybe I should speak under non-related items on the agenda, but that's why I'm here.
Okay.
And I don't know if this is the time to speak or when you bring up non-agenda items. On this restructuring, we're going to rezone commercial industrial properties. And there is a lot of people out there who doesn't know that this is happening. Like Jeff says, put it on the radio, put it in the newspaper. But there's a lot of people that don't listen to the radio, and there's a lot of people who don't buy newspapers. And so, it really isn't out there.
Yeah,
I have spoke with Liz last month, I think just after you guys had a meeting, and a lot of people didn't have a clue, but many people right now are fishing. Just like Dancy's going to be fishing.
Yeah.
So my concern is, what are we rezoning from industrial to light industrial, to commercial, to light commercial? Nobody seems to have the knowledge of this, and I don't know what that schedule is either.
Could I, so what we're doing is we're not actually, what this document isn't actually saying this piece of property is going to have this zoning, it's going to be L1 or whatever. What this is doing is setting up the different types of zoning categories that we'll have. And then, and correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, but then the next step is once you have the code, then you would go back through, I guess, and then you would just determine based upon existing uses and stuff like that. Then that would be when your concern is coming up, like, okay, is this property now going to be commercial? Is it now going to be zoned for residential? But this document isn't changing any zoning at all. What this document's doing is setting up the categories.
What the different zones mean,
yeah,
what you can
defining the
do in
zones.
those zones, is
And then
what this document will do.
And then the process for variances and
Yeah.
the like.
Correct, but if you take a piece of industrial property and go from industrial to light industrial, you just lost the option to do several things with this piece of property that somebody has been paying taxes, say, for 20 years on it. And now it's light industrial, and he can't put a rock crusher, or he can't put a batch plant, or have a pig farm on it.
Yeah, we get that. We're not changing any zoning with this. We're just setting up categories.
Right, but it's coming.
And then there will be more public hearings and more
Yeah.
opportunity to comment. And
Yeah, so I guess you're right, but that's not what we're doing right now. And all we're doing is saying we're going to set up these categories in the future where you have different classifications of industrial. Just like in the existing code, we have that right now. And yeah, you're right. The big problem will be if those are restricted, like the other thing that's been proposed, but isn't necessarily, if this passes, isn't going to make it happen, is, the waterfront designation. The biggest impact right now that this has on industrial property is stating that you can't use industrial property to put up a condominium or turn it into a house. It basically says if you have industrial property, it has to remain as industrial property, and it limits you to just building a 600 square foot dwelling for a caretaker. That is, and I understand some people will have heartburn with that too, but that's the only thing that's limiting people right now with this classification.
Yeah, correct, and I understood about the 600 square foot for a caretaker, which I think as of right now, there is no zoning for that, as far as I know.
Correct.
Restrictions on a caretaker's place.
Correct. Right now, the code says that you can have a caretaker's dwelling, but it doesn't specify any sort of size. So a lot of people have bought industrial property and they've built, houses there.
Yes.
And then the problem is then you have the property next door and you want to put in your rock crusher, and then that's where we run into the problems, is where you have mixed uses in, and then you just have more like the situations up in Hungerford Hill and Scout Bay, which this won't fix. You're still going to have a lot of mixed uses, but the idea was, as the community develops and goes forward, that that the rules are a little bit clearer, so you don't run into situations where you have industrial property where you have zero setback from lot lines, right up against residential property. Things like that. That's what it's trying to identify.
We already have that.
Oh, I understand. That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to make sure that going forward in the future, that when there's more development, that, we tried to avoid that. I mean, but this isn't doing that right now. That's what this code is for, and revision is for how it's going to happen in the future.
Correct. This is just the beginning of that first
Right,
stage.
correct.
But
That's correct.
If you don't say something now,
Correct.
then by the time you get there, it may be too late.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. But, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get,
That's why you have this public hearing.
yeah, that's why we're going through this process, and so, as much as we can do to get the word out to people, that's good. So any of your friends or associates, try and tell them what we're doing so that they understand and they can get their we can get their feedback on it right now.
Right, because as of right now, I only see two of us, unless Joel has industrial and commercial property, but.
Right.
And my resident resides on commercial industrial. Which I know that somebody could possibly put their shops all around my house and it won't bother me.
Well, then what this is doing is it's not, and correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, there's nothing in this that we're going to go into somebody that has an existing use and something that they have right now, and we're going to tell them they can't do it anymore.
No, I think the one exception to that is for signs, and that's actually from our existing code, that if you have a sign that's out of conformity, you're supposed to get it fixed within 10 years. And I just carried that sign section forward.
Right.
But that's the only one where there's any kind of requirement to conform with current code. In fact, it's actually just the opposite. We're making it easier for people to continue uses and expand uses that are not conforming. Currently, if you're not in line with the code, you're not allowed to expand a use that's not conforming. Under the proposal, you would be able to build onto it or expand it. So if you have a business or something or a house that's not consistent with the zoning, you would be able to actually add on to that to a certain degree, where currently you can't. So we're actually liberalizing, allowing people to do more with those places that don't exactly fit in with the current code. And for residences on industrial, there's they obviously can stay, and then there's also the right to rebuild if something were to happen to it. So there's no issue with rebuilding.
So if you guys go to light, you guys aren't going to change any ordinance like in our commercial industrials with extra subdivision is all commercial industrial. So you guys even going to go to light industrial or anything on that?
I can't tell you right now because we're not doing the map portion of it. So right now we're just setting the zoning categories.
Okay.
So after we're done with this part, then we're going to go back and start looking at maps. For the most part, in general terms, I don't want to be specific, but in general, places that are industrial and are being used industrial, stay industrial. The light industrial is for places that are a crazy mix, like Scalby Loop, where it's industrial, but really it's mostly residential with some industrial in there. And that might be a good place for something like light industrial. But if it's solidly industrial and you don't have too much of that residential influx, then I don't see why we would do less industrial,
Okay.
Yeah. So that's but keep an eye on the map because we want to make sure that we get it as close to light as we can. So when we start doing the actual districts, you want to pay close attention to see where you are in that,
Yeah, if the commercial industrial gets changed, that takes money out of my pocket if I resell that.
Sure. Yeah. But I think part of the goal is to maintain industrial as industrial because I think that's where we're really constrained. And to to stop that creep of industrial turning into residential, which we've kind of had over the last few years, and it's really limited industrial property, and to sort of stem that.
Yeah, and so, yeah, keep, you know, get as many people, you know, as you can that are interested in this, because we need your feedback, because it's easier to do it now than later, or than, you know, what they're, you know, just so you understand what we're not trying to do, I guess. Maybe that's a better way to put it.
So do we-
Mr. Chair, we're going to have a meeting Tuesday?
Tuesday the 20th, what time?
What time would you like it?
6:30?
I'd like to see an evening meeting.
It'd be nice to do an evening meeting. I can do it whenever.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm fine.
So you want to do 6:30? 7?
What are your thoughts, Liz?
The day before you leave.
Yeah.
Well, no, she's not leaving till March 7th.
Well, no, it just depends on my home situation. So, you know, if my husband's around and he can take care of the kiddo, then everything's great. And if he's not, then I'm not here. So,
okay.
So there you go.
Yeah.
But earlier is better, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your working people will be here in the evening, your working people won't be.
Yeah.
Cost him money, cost me money, it cost me money yesterday with a 3-hour council meeting. And so, the working people are still working,
Yeah.
and that's something you guys
6?
consider.
That's what Ole requested yesterday.
Okay.
I requested the council go to evening meetings just because my business is closed right now.
So.
You're talking about a February 20th meeting, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, February 20th at 6.
Is there anybody up there that will not be here?
I don't think I'll be here. Maybe it'll be a
So-
man in town for.
6 o'clock?
So everybody but Yancy will be here?
Yes.
Okay, and this will be the only topic on the agenda?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And can we try to do maybe Chris or I and you, we should try and have a discussion with Joe, as Jeff suggested.
If he wants to do another story on it.
Sure.
It's up to him, yeah. I mean, what we sent them is not necessarily what they say on the air, because what we sent them was that there's a public hearing on the Petersburg Development Code.
Right.
Yeah, so I didn't hear what actually got stated, but...
They said it was just downtown.
Yeah, so I don't know where
And
that
I
came
called
from, because that's not what we sent. It's also noticed in the newspaper and has been for...
Yeah, but a lot of people,
I mean, I don't know what to do with the people who don't read the paper and they don't listen to the radio.
Well, I know, it's pretty hard to how to
that's
read
kind of a tough one
how do you
to...
reach them?
Yeah. We also have an email newsletter going out to about 150 people, so, and it's been on, I think, the radio twice and the newspaper once, and so I'm not sure what else to do as far as garnering outreach, but if you want to do another discussion with Joe about it, we could approach him.
I think we should, just to make for sure people understand what we're talking about, because a lot of people have asked me what we're doing, and they don't have a clue what development code means.
Exactly.
And so maybe we could have maybe we could talk to Joe and see if on the 20th at lunchtime that day, we could have a discussion with him after the midday news, if he's inclined to do it.
I think it needs to be earlier, maybe Monday, so people have time to plan. Oh, I'm not going to do dinner, I'm going to the 6 o'clock meeting.
Yeah.
The day before is President's Day, I think, right?
Be mentioned that morning.
Right.
Again, and ask for.
At noon the next day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that work? Are you going to be around?
You know, and I think the problem.
I'll be here.
With the paper, you know, a lot of times it's in the public notice section,
Yeah.
and a lot of people just skip over the public
Yeah,
notice
yeah.
thing because they think it's another thing saying they're buying more gravel, you know?
Yeah, right,
It's like-
yeah, no, I agree.
No,
So if they could get them to write maybe a little article on it.
I'm in town until the 18th of March, so.
Okay.
No, I'm like,
Yeah, no, you're right. So you want to try and do that?
It'd be nice to have a radio call and ask questions.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we should put something out about, on Friday, put a PSA about the new pig farm that's going in downtown Petersburg, and just. Or the new Walmart's going to be located in Singley Alley.
Yeah.
See what else can we do? Oh, McDonald's, yeah.
Yeah, we're getting a new McDonald's.
Yeah.
That would
Right next
excite
to
me.
the pot shop.
Yeah.
get some attention.
I love their french fries.
All right,
We done?
let me get back to,
Yeah.
We still don't know for sure if we have the building, but
I'm emailing right now, but we have other agenda items here.
yes.
yeah, sorry.
All right. Any commissioner comments?
I guess I made mine earlier.
Yes?
I just wanted to say why I voted no. I don't feel like they brought us a complete package, and we're going to have to revisit it again. I think that's wasting our time.
Yeah?
I concur.
Staff comments?
Oh, I think I've probably said enough. Thank you.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, think about this. And then,
I put mine in my folder.
oh. There's more.